Work Comp Talk podcast presents Workers' Compensation Stories, brought to you by Pacific Workers, the lawyers for injured workers. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Work Comp Talk. My name is Carmen, and joining me today is my co-host, Bilal Qasim, president and co-founder of Pacific Workers, the lawyers for injured workers. We're excited today. We're breaking off a series that we just thought about and decided, you know what? What if we start sharing some of the client stories, some of injured worker stories throughout the Bay Area? And today, luckily, we have the help of Donny, who's joining us as well. Donny, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we're going to dive deep into the story. If you're new to workers' comp, if you're in the middle of workers' comp, or if you're at the end ropes, or have had an opportunity to deal with workers' comp, then this story might resonate with you. This story definitely is to spread kind of the idea of what workers' comp is. Living in the world that we live in, there's a lot of people that think workers' comp is the money to retirement. And Bilal, you more than anyone knows that you can't retire with workers' comp. But
no, I think the case is more likely to outlive you.
Literally, it's an idea, but it's an idea people have that, hey, oh, you got workers' comp, man. You made it, dude. Just retire. You're good. You're set for life. So we're going to dive into Donny's story. Donny, tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, where were you raised, born? Who's Donny? What was your life like prior to your injury?
Well, if you want to go back, let's see. I was born and raised in San Francisco, California. I moved down to the South Bay when I got to high school. And I've been athletic. I've played sports my whole life. And kind of what got me into, where I was with the injury was I got into competitive cheerleading when I was in high school. And that led into 20 plus years of coaching cheer, tumbling, gymnastics. And I was also a massage therapist. So I've always been in a job where I was helping people, whether it was, athletically or, with injuries, kind of like physical therapy or massage therapy. So, yeah.
And tumbling and gymnastics is not an easy task. I have my daughters on them as well. And there's, as far as the instructors, there's a lot of picking up, helping the kids with some, flips and stuff. So the job is demanding and set for injuries for sure.
Definitely, cheerleading was deemed one of the top 10 most dangerous sports, and it was up there at number one for a long time.
Yep.
And they've implemented a lot of precautions and rules so that kids aren't getting detrimentally hurt anymore. But there's still a lot of injuries, and as the coaches, because of my injuries, gyms and other companies are going more for a non-spotting type of learning environment, because it's very taxing on us, on our bodies as the coach, because we're kind of between the line between life and death or paralysis with some of these kids. If that girl, on my first injury, if I missed her, if I didn't catch her, that would have been her neck, so yeah, my first injury was saving a high school cheerleader from falling directly on her head from about 7 feet in the air.
Wow.
Yes.
So how did you hear about Pacific Workers? How did you find Pacific Workers when you got injured? You said,
well, I've been dealing with the whole workers' comp issue for a while, and when they basically sent me out of the QME office saying that they were going to send me back to work, I had a torn bicep, a distal bicep repair that I had just had surgery for prior, that year or the year before. And I wasn't ready. I didn't feel like I was ready to go back to work. I was still in a lot of pain. I had no, not the same strength that I had, prior to the injury. And I had a QME, a qualified medical examiner, that was just kind of like, all right, hold your arm out. All right, you're good to go back to work. And it was like, kind of washing his hands clean of it. And that was it. I sat in the car. I was like tearing up, I was like, what am I going to do if I can't go back to work? how am I going to do this? Can I retrain? I'm not going to have money. Like all of these things were coming in. My daughter was just born. My wife is working. Like it was the weight of the world coming down on me all at once. And I immediately went to my phone. I started searching, workers' comp lawyers. And I went through 15, 20 different websites, and then your guys' company popped out to me. And I mean, within the first phone call, I was like, okay, I still don't know what's going to happen, but at least someone's like giving me that peace of mind where they're here to help, and we'll go from there.
That's
So
awesome.
let's talk about your first injury for a second. When did it happen?
It's been so long. Like I almost need a timeline like in front of me of like, when it happened. So March of 2019 is when I injured it. And I remember when I caught the girl, I felt it tear. And any of my injuries, like I get an injury, what did your dad say? Just spread some dirt on it, you'll be fine, and that's how I was like, okay, that hurt. I heard a snapping sound,
Ouch.
being in school for sports medicine. I was an athletic trainer in a college. Like all those like things that I knew of what to ask them, I heard, and I'm like, okay. And I didn't want to look, you don't want to look down at it. And sure enough, it was torn. And I waited, I don't know, maybe like 3-4 days, and it got worse. And then I was back at work trying to like spot kids, and I couldn't even lift my arm. And then finally I told my boss, like, this is what's going on. And immediately she goes, okay, well, let's start the process. Let's call workers' comp. Let's see what's going on. So I had a distal bicep tear, and they were like, okay, well, let's get it checked out. I went into the doctors. They did an x-ray. Obviously the x-ray didn't show much. It's more just bone. And then we started the process of like, okay, well, we need to schedule an MRI, but let's put you in physical therapy first. So of course, my first day, the evaluation happened. The physical therapist, he goes, I can already tell it's a tear. Like we can't really do anything until you get an MRI. Fast forward 4 months of physical therapy. They just kept pushing physical therapy. And he kept pushing back. We need an MRI. And then finally we went in, and they're like, yeah, there's a significant tear. You're gonna fully rupture it. Like it could happen any day. You can catch, your daughter, a girl, anything falling on the ground. Like he goes, it's gonna rupture. And then they made the decision to have the surgery in September of 2019.
So that seems pretty dangerous. I mean, the fact that they don't really know what's going on in there, and here you are going month after month through physical therapy. Were you worried at all that you were going to make it worse?
Oh, and I did. Yeah, I did. Every day it was to a point where I can even physically feel and hear it, tearing even more in my arm.
Wow.
And then to a point where, I can't tell parents this. I can't tell parents, well, I don't know if my arm's going to be able to hold your daughter up anymore. Or what if I was spotting a kid, they're worried about, workers' comp and covering my end of it. But what about a lawsuit from a parent that of a girl that I drop on her neck and now she's paralyzed, so those are things that I was going through every day from March all the way until I had my surgery, that, I'm not going to be able to catch this person or save them or, protect them, then that's my job, is protecting these girls and boys, from catastrophic injuries.
Right. When you injured yourself in the beginning, you said you didn't look for an attorney, I guess, until you were at the point where the QME was kind of telling you, all right, you're good. You ain't got nothing. What was it like for you without an attorney? What was the process within? Obviously, we already hear that they didn't want to get the MRI done. But did you feel at that point that that was the right way to go, that they were doing their job, you trusted them, or were you just like, I have no idea what I'm doing, I'm just following the lead?
The claims adjuster was always she was always trying to console me, like, yes, we're doing everything we can. And I said, yes, but it's also been 3 months. Why is this MRI not been approved? My physical therapist is telling me, it's a tear, and you guys are telling me, well, let's keep lifting weights and keep doing this and keep doing that. So I was kind of never getting the the definite answer of what was going to be done. And here I have a physical therapist who has it all laid out. Like, you need to get an MRI, then we need to decide whether we're doing surgery or not, and then if we do surgery, now we're going to do this. So like, he had a whole plan where they were kind of going off of this book. She always talked about this book, well, by the book, we have to do this, and this before we schedule surgery, or we got to do this, and this before we release you back to work. So it was always this long drawn out protocol, which I understand. Everything has to have a deadline and timeline, and they want me to heal. If I can heal without surgery, they want to do that. Yeah. But to me, I'm just more common sense. Like, if my brake line has a tear in it, and there's my car's not going to be able to stop. I'm not going to be like, let's see if it heals itself, like, no,
oh,
fix
man.
it.
Yeah.
Bilal, as the attorney, this book, this book that Johnny's talking about, is this something you've ever heard about? Is this something you're familiar with? Is there an actual book?
Yeah, I mean, so I think what he's describing to some extent is this process in workers' comp where there's this guideline, basically. It's called the medical treatment utilization schedule. And it really talks about the fact that the doctors kind of follow a playbook along the way. They kind of check the boxes. Your arm could be sawed off and they're like, well, no, we haven't tried Tylenol yet, and they go through this process of elimination through which they kind of check the boxes, and they exhaust conservative care as much as possible before they get to the more meaningful care. Sometimes, even if it's just patently obvious that someone needs more aggressive care, the doctors have to try these things. And they have to try these things because if they try to go from 0 to 100 and they request authorization, the insurance carrier will deny authorization. And so they do have to go through this process, even though, unfortunately, people need more substantive care than what they're getting. And that can take a while. And unfortunately, it's not like you just go to your doctor's office with private insurance. If you walked in today and you said, hey, doctor, I really want an MRI, and maybe there was some justification for it, your doctor could get it done same day. With workers' comp, there's definitely a huge lag.
It's true, because when I went in, even with my own personal insurance, are we allowed to say like what my medical is? I don't want to. Sure. So I have Kaiser, and I went into Kaiser, and immediately she comes in, she has me squeeze her hand, she has me do a couple of things. She goes, "Oh, it's tennis elbow," and I'm like, no, it's not tennis elbow. I'm like, the mechanism, like I this is what I did, this is what I felt, I heard. Well, you don't have any bruising. And I said, okay, like, I don't have any bruising. Like, I don't bruise easily. Like, even after all my surgeries, like, nothing, no bruising at all. Like, very little on the bicep. I flick my mom in her arm, and her whole arm is bruised, like everyone bruises differently. Yeah.
I get a mosquito bite and it bruises.
So like you said, I think private insurance, like if I go in there and I want surgery, they'll be like, okay, let's do surgery, because they'll cover it. But the moment it was workers' comp, it was like they almost tried everything to get around what the actual procedure was going to be. And then I think that's when the workers' comp from my company at the time stepped in and said, well, no, we're going to take it on. Don't worry about Kaiser workers' comp. We're going to take it on. And at first I thought it was going good. I mean, she had called me, pretty regularly. She kept me in the loop of certain things. But then when it wasn't helping, when I was like, okay, well, we're 3 months into physical therapy, my arm's not getting better. I'm really worried about it tearing even more. Can we decide what we're going to do? And then they finally did. And I apologize. I was throwing out dates. I'm way off on the dates. But I was like,
it's
that
okay.
Was 2 years before that, right? So yeah. I mean, I didn't realize how long I have been dealing with this. It's been a long time. COVID really threw that whole year.
Right?
It's like a year that we've just missed. And you got to count it.
Well, and that was just your first injury, right? So
Yeah, and that was just my first
So
injury.
wait, Donnie, you didn't learn the lesson after the first injury. You go and hurt yourself again.
Well, so going into that, after talking, after right after I hired you guys, that was it. I was eliminated from discussing my case any further with the claims adjuster. A couple times I had called and she's like, "You have a lawyer now. We can't talk to you." And I was like, "Oh, but I wanted to talk to you about my doctor's appointment." She goes, "I can't talk to you anymore." And I'm like, "Okay." So I actually went back to work. I had the surgery September. They released me back to work, light duty in March. So I started working. Actually, no, I take that back. I started working in December, light duty, no spotting. Like I had my arm in a sling, and went back to work, and it started going well. And I started lifting, getting back to what I was doing. And in the summer after that, the year after that surgery, I went to pick up a piece of equipment and I felt something pop in my arm again. And of course, immediately I got the cold sweat, like dropped the equipment. And as I dropped the equipment, I tripped over, fell, kind of rolled. And, I'm a big dude. So all the kids were laughing. They thought it was hilarious that I, that I fell. And, again, like, you got adrenaline running. So like I popped up, didn't think anything of it. And again, it's like, if I sprained my thumb, I'm not going to go to my boss and go, "Oh, I hurt my thumb." So like my knee hurt, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was until the days started to go on. My knees started to hurt more. And I ended up partially tearing my ACL, and I tore a good section of my medial meniscus.
Wow.
And then this is where the fun of the workers' comp issue started to happen, because they just looked at it as, he's injured again. And, and I just felt like I got the runaround for 2 years, for the past 2 years with the knee injury. So I can
Bilal,
go into more.
as you see the whole scenario pan out, what is your first initial thought as his attorney? What, like, when you look at his record, you're like, oh man.
I mean, I obviously I felt bad. A lot of people we represent at the firm, they've never been injured at work before. They don't understand the process, and the idea behind workers' comp as a system is to be there to care for people and give them the resources they need to get back on their feet when they've been injured. In our experience as lawyers, has been quite the opposite. And so when someone like Donnie comes in and he's very optimistic about the process, I have to be the bearer of bad news.
Yep.
And, oftentimes I find a lot of problems that are going on in the case, and because people don't have the knowledge that we do as lawyers, they don't know to spot it. With Donnie's first case, they were completely underpaying him for his temporary disability rate, like significantly.
Yes.
They probably owed him at least double or triple what they were paying him.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, they weren't taking his knee case seriously either. We kept trying to find the right doctor to really give the proper evaluation and diagnosis for his knee, and it just wasn't happening. I think you'd consulted with 3 knee surgeons?
Yeah, 3 knee surgeons. 3 knee surgeons, a QME, and then a pain specialist.
But at this point, I'm thinking, okay, they sent him back to work. He didn't like, oh, I want to go back to work. Or at the end of the day, they gave the okay, whether he was with a sling or not. That's even more of a hazard, because it's like he's technically only working with one hand. And exactly what happened. He tripped. It wasn't like he was able to use his hands to even break that fall. So how do they go back and then still second guess the second injury? Is like, you shouldn't have sent him home or to work until he was okay to fully be recovered from one injury. Is that usually the case?
I mean, there's this misconception, right? If you ask an insurance adjuster about workers' comp, they're going to say, "Oh, yeah, it's just a bunch of people who want paid vacation." And it's hard,
they wanted retirement,
right? It's like, yes, that person clearly wanted to undergo surgery. They couldn't have just taken PTO, right? Like, right. It's this weird scenario where you have this jaded industry, and they're projecting their beliefs onto each and every individual that comes through the system. And there's people that have incredibly serious injuries that need serious medical care, and they need time off to recover. And they don't understand what individuals are going through. And there's this rush to push people through, go get the care you need. If you don't get better in 6 months, there's something wrong with you. You're lying, you're malingering, get back to work. And I see it all too often, to be honest.
Is that how you felt, Donnie?
No, like I wanted to get back to work. Like I was like wanting to get back to work, and to a point where, I had people like, even friends or family, like, they're like, come on, really? Like you're just living on this disability check. I'm like, I could be making 3 times as much if I go back to work. Like I'm not making what I need to make, and I'm stuck at home. Like it's not, this is not fun. Like I don't like sitting here in pain every day. And the main thing that we all talked about was, I want my knee fixed, I want my bicep fixed, I want my other knee fixed. Like I just want to be back to where I was before the injury. And I don't think that's too hard to ask. I mean, I thought that's what it's there for. You get injured at work, you get taken care of, you get better, you go back to work. And it's not as cut and dry as we seem, it seems.
So what happened in the second turnaround when you got injured from the knee? What was
Well,
it like?
so I don't know if Bilal remembers this, but we were talking in the deposition of the bicep case, and they had said something, and immediately, like, if I hear a term, I'm like, hey, time out. Can you explain to that, what that term means?
Mm-hmm.
And it basically, I don't know if you remember the term. I mean, Bilal knows the term, but it was, he basically said that their workers' comp carrier is no longer representing my boss.
Mhm.
So I was like, okay, so what does that mean? He goes, well, you're not really a liability to them anymore. So they were kind of dragging the case out, and maybe you can explain it a little bit better, but it was to a point where it just blew me away until I talked to my boss about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what Donnie's referring to is something called being on the risk, which means, insurance companies have, or excuse me, employers have insurance policies, just like we have auto insurance policies for our car. And every year we have to renew the policy.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing with workers' comp insurance. And so oftentimes employers will not renew their insurance coverage with a specific carrier, and they'll get their coverage from somewhere else. And when that happens, the insurance carrier that was providing coverage when the person got injured, they still have the responsibility to pay for medical care and benefits throughout the duration of the case. However, if there's any new injuries that occur, it's not their problem, it's the new insurance carrier's problem. So
Oh, okay, got it.
when that happens, they're no longer on the risk. And
Mm-hmm.
to some extent, they want to be done because they just want to close out their books. They don't want anything to do with the employer anymore, the case, any of that stuff.
Yeah. So I went back to work, and as this is all going on, the deposition happens, and I go back to my boss and I said, well, what are they talking about? She goes, yeah, well, because of your 2 injuries, we lost our insurance. So we had to get a new insurance. So now there's turmoil between my employer and myself. She goes, and we're getting cameras, because we just got to make sure that, people aren't, just making stuff up. And I'm like, good. I said, and I was all about, I said, I've been telling you to get cameras in here, just to protect the coaches, because, there's male coaches. We work with girls. I said, I want to be protected, for everything. And I said, I agree. I said, I'm glad you're getting cameras. I said, man, if you had, I said, I kind of wish you had cameras back then, because
Like,
then
you would have helped me.
I could have been making some money on America's Funniest Home Videos if you watched me fall over this springboard that I was lifting. It was just hilarious. I mean, not now because I had 2 surgeries because of it,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, I was all about that. And it's tough because now, I don't know if I'm gonna have a job when I go back, because they've given me so many restrictions, that there's no position for me to go back to right now, based on that. If I make a miraculous recovery and I'm running and I'm squatting and kneeling and doing all this other stuff, then I hope, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really hope you're running around doing backflips and push-ups.
I'm not gonna tumble anymore. Like I'm not doing anything like that. But like, even the day after this past surgery I just had in June, my daughter comes up to me. She goes, "Okay, now we can go play soccer down on the field together." And I'm like, and that breaks my heart. And I'm like, no, I still have months and months of recovery before I can even, do that. But I ran for 7 minutes yesterday at PT, so on the gravity treadmill. So I'm starting to get back to where I was, but now I'm 70 pounds heavier than I was when this whole thing, started, after the second surgery. So now I have other things I have to accomplish so that I don't injure myself any further while I'm recovering.
Yeah,
So
and
you were very
something.
optimistic.
Oh, go ahead, Connor.
He was very optimistic from the get-go. I think that, the idea of people getting injured, to them, it's like, I don't care if I don't get back to normal. It's just, I just want to be able to work and feel functional and feel like I can be a part of. In your case, Don, you're almost like, no, I want to be back to where I was at before I got injured. I want my life back.
Yeah.
How much has this affected you at home? I mean, you mentioned you have a daughter. She wants to play with you. How has this affected your overall house situation?
Well, going back to when this first started, it was just fresh, new for both my wife and I. We didn't know what was going on. We didn't know the procedures, and
Mm-hmm.
months and months of waiting, and so to people, it's like, okay, you've been sitting at home for 2 months, and I'm like, well, it's not my choice. Like, I don't want to sit at home, but I couldn't lift my arm. I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that. So at home, it became a struggle between my wife and I, because now I'm not pulling in as much money. So we had to adjust our budget. We had to, take some of the frivolous things that we like to do, all the time. We couldn't do as much, which is fine, but at the same time, it was like, okay, well, if you're not going back to work doing that, what are you going to do? So it was a constant, well, can you get a job right now? And I can't collect, disability and have a job, So it was kind of a power struggle where it was like, if I'm not making enough at a job to cover, daycare and the bills that I was taking care of before, then what are my options? Going back to school, doing this, preparing myself. So, I was in that kind of limbo state where I thought I was going to be back to work within 6-7 months, and here we are, 3 years later, we're still fighting them on this and that. And finally, I got a surgery to take care of it. I'm doing a lot better now. Am I still in pain? Yes. Can I go back and spot tumbling? No, I don't think I trust myself, my body, and my injuries enough to not even see. I always talk about other people, but I should start being selfish for myself. I don't feel like I'm ready to do that, because I feel like I'm going to hurt myself, and in turn, it's dangerous for, someone I'm working with. And if I hurt somebody because I wasn't capable of doing my job, it would be detrimental to me, not
Mm-hmm.
only to their family, but to me, because I'm that safety net that should never break. And
So you
it's
went
been
from
broken.
thinking 6 to 7. You were like, okay, I'll be back in like a few months. I'll be back. I'll be back. It's now turned into years, which is something that you weren't ready for.
No,
Your wife wasn't ready for.
no, it's been a hard 3 years. It's been a hard 3 years, and she's been my rock. She's been here, and she's been supportive. And even Bilal, like I felt like Bilal sometimes was my, like, my brother. I'm like calling him up, I'm like, dude, she's nagging me again about this. Like, I
Aw.
don't know what to do. Like, can you talk to her? And, you know,
Oh man, but you
because
became the therapist.
he did, he was Bilal's never been like, oh yeah, it's going to be this, it's going to be great. He's been so, like, for me, he's been honest. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what has, kept me with you guys, is because you've been honest. You tell me how it is, you don't sugarcoat it. And, and I appreciate that, because it helps me make, a legitimate decision about, what I'm going to do next, and gosh, I mean, even with this last settlement offer that they gave me to not do anything else, I'm so glad I didn't take it, because cool, I would have a settlement right now, but I wouldn't be walking. I wouldn't be doing the things I'm doing now. Like right now, I'm sitting with you guys. I'm in no pain. I don't have any pain in my knee, my left knee, the one that they did surgery on.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not how it was. For the past year and a half to 2 years, I was in constant pain every single day. And now that the surgery has fixed that, yeah, I mean, it hurts when I go up and down stairs, because the surgery is just fresh. It's only a month and a half now, maybe almost 2 months now. So little things like that. I can't run, I can't do this, so there's still a long list of things I cannot do, but the normal daily activities are getting better to where it's getting a little bit easier, and if I didn't fight for it, if Bilal didn't fight for it, and our team didn't fight for it, I would be, who knows, I don't know where I'd be right now.
Yeah.
Probably divorced. Your wife probably would have been like, nope, like, why'd you go through that route? It's your fault. I mean, it's a family dynamic that changes, and I'm glad you brought this up, because there's been times, working for the firm, and Bilal, more than anybody, you've seen it. We've seen families get destroyed because of workers' comp. It's a life-changing scenario. There's people that have been left out in the cold. They can't find a means to make the ends meet. They can't find enough money from their disability payments. And on top of that, they have kids to feed, and workers' comp doesn't help. Most of the time, it's not, they're not gonna come in and cover for you. They're definitely not. And we've seen families homeless at the point where we have to find shelters for them to make sure that they're okay. Excuse my dog.
No, I mean, we had there's one client I can recall where, we had to call the landlord and beg him not to evict her, and just say, look, she's, we're going to be wrapping up her case soon. She's going to get some money. She's going to be able to pay you. Like, please, like, just don't put this person out on the street. That's not right. And what Anu and I had talked about, several times, I think, was there's this balance between how long can I as an individual keep going with this process? It's slow. It's so arduous. The pay you receive in terms of temporary disability or permanent disability is far less than adequate. And so when you're battling with this multi-billion-dollar insurance company and they have all the time and resources in the world and you don't, it really puts a wedge in your life. And you have to make a tough decision and ask yourself when enough is enough, and when you'd rather take the money and run and deal with things on your own so that you can get back to your life. And oftentimes people don't have a good decision make. It's oftentimes picking the best of the worst, and even just taking the money isn't going to be good enough, but they're so fed up with workers' comp as a process and the delays and the lack of care they get that they say, to hell with it, I'll take my chances.
I was there. I was there, and we had numerous conversations where I was just like, I'm done. Like, I don't even want to fight it anymore. Like, my wife is constantly nagging me. Sorry, not nagging. I hate the word nagging because it's all love, but there needed to be a decision made. And I think once I just said, look, the decision is we're going to get my knee fixed and I'm going to fight it as long as I can. Then she was kind of like, okay, well, let's do what it takes, and she backed me up. I think it was just kind of that limbo, those months and months where nothing was happening, and then when nothing's happening and now no money's coming in, now it becomes like, okay, now we need to really make a decision. And Bilal knows that once they cut temporary disability from then, I mean, that was 6 months of just like, okay, what do we do? Like twiddling our thumbs, like making a decision. And I almost took that settlement to just kind of end things. But yeah, I mean, if, like you said, how long can you go until you say enough is enough? And
right.
And the surgery, I'm so glad I waited and finally got that surgery approved, because the doctor even went in. And it's funny, he was even kind of like, well, the MRI shows this. He goes, we won't really know what's going on until we go back in there. He told me when I woke up from that surgery, he goes, I am so glad we went back in there. He goes, there was a massive tear. He goes, that's what's been hurting you for the past year and a half. And I'm like, I know. I've been telling you guys that. Like,
oh yeah, the pains.
My gosh, like, you don't understand. Like,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
And this is the power of the doctor, right? Because if you don't get with the right medical group, the right physician, the people who put faith in you as a patient and want to do their best to help you get the care you need and recover, you're just another number. In
Damn.
this particular case, there's a group, Comprehensive Spine and Sport, Dr. Navani's group, and they've been phenomenal.
Yeah, they've been great.
Really good people.
How did this take a toll on your mental health? Because they come hand in hand. I mean, this completely rocked your world upside down and then again. How did this
Well,
go
that's
for
the
you?
part that people don't know. Like there were numerous times where I wanted to get on the phone and give the adjuster a call, and of course, because I'm working with you guys right now, I was told I was not allowed to discuss anything with them. But like I went through a year of group counseling. I had a psychiatrist that I talked to once every 6 weeks. It was to a point where I was so depressed, I had contemplated taking my life. And it was to a point where I discussed this with my wife, and we're both crying. And like, how do you ask for help when you feel, like no one is going to help you?
Like the person that's supposed to help you is not helping
not
you,
helping,
and there's no one else you can go to.
Like my boss doesn't even want to have anything to do with me now. Like the job that I love so much with, working with kids is not there. I can't go back to massage because now someone else has taken my position there. Like I lost 2 jobs, even though one of the jobs had to do with the workers' comp, because I was out for both of them. Like I lost that job too. So now I have nothing. My wife's upset with me. My daughter's young. She doesn't know anything, but like my family's looking at me, like I'm worthless, and they probably didn't, but that's how I felt. I'm supposed to be the man bringing money into the family, and now I'm sitting here not doing anything, so I've been to the bottom, and I know what that felt like, and I know that I never want to go back back down that road again. And I mean, it truly brought me to a point where I thought I wasn't going to be here anymore. And I'm glad I am, because, my family is here, my friends are here. And, I had a lot of people in my corner, and it's just hard. It's, you got those 15 people that are rooting for you, but that one person that says something negative about you just cuts you to the core. And it's terrible, because, like you don't need those people in your life, even kids, even like, it's funny, while I was recovering, people didn't know the extent of it, because obviously I'm not in the gym. They don't see me every day, but she was just kind of like, yeah, come on, you're taking a little bit long to recover. Can you get back? Because my daughter needs to learn her tumbling. And I'm like, okay, like it was just funny, because like she just thinks like I have a sprained ankle and I'm sitting at home. And I'm like, you don't understand, like the muscle was like torn off the bone, and they cut my arm open, and they, some people just don't understand, it's all about them.
Well, and
I think that's really
Donny,
cool.
my experience with you, you're a very happy-go-lucky, positive person.
Yeah, you can totally tell.
Try.
Yeah, well, you put your best foot forward. We'll say that.
Which one is that? Is that my right or my left? Because I don't know which one's the best foot anymore.
But you've maintained a very positive outlook throughout the case. But even then, there's times talking to you, I could sense the frustration on your part, and it's frustrating for us as attorneys too, because as I'm sure I've told you throughout, our numerous phone calls and stuff we've had throughout the case, I must have told you, a million times now, oh, we're still waiting for this, still waiting for that. Oh, this next appointment, next month, next year, next whatever. And it's always wait. And it's this system of workers' comp that it's so slow and arduous. It's frustrating as someone who litigates, because I'm trapped within this realm with these rules and these people on the defense, and restricting everything I can possibly do to try to help someone. And it's hard to articulate that, I think, to clients sometimes, from my perspective.
Well, yeah, and I apologize. I hope I've never gotten upset with you or yelled at you or anything, because you guys, like I said, you guys are the the only ones in my corner that actually know what's going on. So yes, my family's in my corner, but they don't know like the legality standpoint of it. They don't know, that it takes time. They just see like, oh, you've been on disability for 3 years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, like when they put it like that, where it's just kind of like black and white, it's like, okay, what do you want me to do? So I always throw it back at them. What do you want? Well, you gotta have a job so you guys can buy a house and you can do this. And I'm like, we own our house here. Yes, if we have another baby, we're going to need a bigger house. I said, but right now, like, I don't even think we should be talking about having another baby until I'm back at work. So like, it's like this round around thing that I go through with my family, and to a point where I had to push away, like even my parents, my parents, her parents, in-laws, extended family. And I literally just had to talk with my wife. I said, this is what it's going to be. Like, I need you to back me up and I need you to be here for me. And she has, like I said, like Bilal said, I mean, there were times where I called him frustrated because it was 6 weeks and then it was 2 months and then it was 6 months. And like, still you guys, it wasn't that you guys weren't doing anything. It was, they were just pushing it out. They were denying it. They were approving it, denying it. It was like going back and forth. It's been a crazy, a crazy process, to say the least.
At any point between these waiting periods and these answers, did you ever doubt your legal team? There's been times where clients constantly say or blame the attorney because they feel like if the attorney is working with the insurance company to screw the injured worker over. Did you feel that at all?
No. Like I've had lawyers. So, I've had lawyers before where, yes, you pay a lawyer, to send a fax. You pay a lawyer for their time, the hour that you talk, we talked for an hour. It's this amount of money. For workers' comp lawyers, like it's like we're not paying anything until we get paid. So I've never doubted that because it's in your guys' best interest for me to win, right? I mean, that's how workers' comp lawyers work, right? So to a point where, so that's the legal standpoint. But personally, no, I've never felt that way at all because he's been honest with me, No, if it was like, oh, it's going to be better by next week, and then it's not, then I'd be kind of like, okay, you've told me 7 times that it's going to be better by next week, but it's not. But, and Bilal's never been like that. He's like, no, this is going to take, 4 months, just buckle down. Let's wait it out. Like I said, like for me, I'm that kind of person in every relationship. Like, even my wife, like, she's like, oh, the dishes in the sink. Just tell me to do like black and white. Tell me what you want. I'll do it.
Yeah.
Tell me how you feel. I don't like the gray area.
Bilal, on your standpoint, obviously working with a ton of clients, having the opportunity to work with someone like Donny, where, he's always putting, positive things into his mind. He's trustworthy. He's trusting you with his injury. It's not always like that for some cases. There's times where clients go off on you guys, and clients don't understand what Donny in this case understands. Like, the attorney is on my side. Like, why else would it be differently? And unfortunately, there's been stories where we hear other attorneys give up. There's been times where attorneys it's too much for them to handle. They're tired of the case themselves. So they just kind of tell them, just settle. Tell us a little bit about that side.
I mean, look, lawyers are not a particularly trustworthy group. Just, stereotypically, I think a lot of people question lawyers, right? They think we're, snaky. I think there was
say no more. Yes, say no more. There was a study done of where you would categorize a lawyer, and I think lawyers fell into the category the same as prostitutes.
It was actually below prostitutes. And
below. Yes.
So it was a trustworthiness scale. And, they had firefighters and EMTs and teachers and these people that are held in high regard. You get lower down the list and you see, politicians and, then you see prostitutes and then you see lawyers, right? So for whatever reason, lawyers are considered, untrustworthy for whatever reason. And it's quite the opposite. We take an oath, to uphold the Constitution, and it's kind of like a joke to some people, but really it's serious. We take an oath and we have a license, and we're held under strict scrutiny. Our clients that's our everything, right? We're held to this incredibly high standard to always execute on their best interests, and that's it. And so from our perspective, we always want to do the best we can do for the client. And as Donny had mentioned, I operate on contingency fee, which means the more Donny gets, the more I get. And so, even selfishly, it's in my own best interest to do the best job possible to get the best result possible for Donny. And in Donny's case too, it wasn't just about money, obviously. We actually said no to a settlement. I had the settlement documents on my desk. We were going to sign them and be done with it. But Donny and I talked it through and decided it wasn't in his best interest. And
about
now
10 conversations back and forth about it.
Was it the number on the settlement? What was the settlement for?
No, I mean, it was going to be a buyout of his entire case, including his medical, which would have meant his surgery and any needs in the future would have been his responsibility. And we had talked through it, and it wasn't bad. We'd kind of talked about a plan after the fact, and it seems like he would have been able to take care of himself, and everything would have been okay. But I think in my mind, what I was concerned with most for Donny is that if this surgery he was going to have wasn't going to be successful, and what his complications were going to be like, and the fact that he would be giving up additional temporary disability that would be paid to him throughout his recovery. Quite frankly, it was his health and welfare and life outside of workers' comp after the fact that I think I was most concerned about. And so, we decided to wait it out, and it turned out to be an awesome surgery, and he's doing much better. But, Donny's put a lot of trust in our firm. I think it's hard for clients to do that, especially, some clients now where we've actually never met in person. I had the privilege to meet Donny in person, before the pandemic, but now, we have clients coming on board who don't even get to see us in person yet. And building up that rapport and trust so that when I'm explaining, it's not me, it's them, referring to the delays in the system and what I have to deal with as a lawyer. I don't know that they necessarily believe us all the time. And you're right. I've had clients, accuse us of working with the insurance company specifically. I've had a client, accuse me of altering their sworn deposition testimony and working with the defendant to, work against them and stuff. And for me, it's insulting for one, and two, it's incredibly frustrating because of the work that we pour into the case on behalf of the client to hear, not only are you not doing good enough, but you're actually working against me. It's a difficult pill to swallow sometimes. But, right. Donny's been amazing, to work with, and I've got nothing but respect for him as well. And his case is still ongoing.
So do you have a deadline of when that's going to end? My wife wants to know.
You want the honest answer?
Actually, honest. You've been honest. Tell me, what are your thoughts? When do you think this is going to be over? Because I mean, or do we not want to discuss that on this one?
Well, probably I'll have a lot more gray hair by then. Put it that way.
Ooh, okay. Was that too far?
This gray hair has come in since this started.
Yeah, we can
believe
I wore the
that.
Hat.
Yeah.
So, Donny, I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
Given the stance that you're on the client side, you're on the side of the injured worker, you've obviously been in the workers' comp system for quite a minute. What would you tell other injured workers that are listening to this story who are navigating the system themselves? What can you say to them to help solidify that relationship with whoever it is that is their attorney?
Well, I mean, I would say, first of all, get an attorney. I mean, right now, the constant battle that you have between yourself and the workers' comp carrier, I found out very quickly that they're not here to protect you. They're here to protect their employer, the person that is hiring them, and then you're secondary or third or even fourth down that list. So you really have to advocate for yourself and getting, the right legal team behind you, to do all this stuff, like little loopholes. Like you might call it, lawyers being snakes. Guess what? They're doing their job, and they know it like the back of their hand. Where me, I don't know, the legal jargon and what I needed to do to increase my TDD rate or to get the surgery approved, or, little things, in the notes where I would have missed, but they know where to look for stuff like that. So, just, you know, waited out is a very loose term, because you might not have that. If my wife wasn't employed, like if with COVID, and that's a whole nother aspect that we had to deal with. If COVID wasn't in the picture, it might have been a little bit different. But with COVID being in the picture too, and people losing their jobs, I might have been forced to take a settlement just to get money coming in that I wasn't going to get. So it's hard. If you have the backing, if you can, your spouse pick up the other side of it while this is going on, it's tough. It's a tough pill to swallow. And me, it was very 50-50 with us before. We paid a lot of the bills together. And for 6 months of that, it became 100% she was doing everything. And that's hard. How do you ask your significant other to pay your bills that you took on? And it's very hard. And for her, she didn't think twice. That's what a spouse does. And
she nagged.
And you know what, I hate to say nag, because it's such a derogatory term.
It's in a good way.
She didn't understand like what was going on. She didn't understand what I was going through, and right. I didn't understand what I was going through. So we went into a marriage counselor. We went to, like I said, group therapy for depression for myself, and then a psychiatrist. And that year that I was in counseling really opened the door for discussion and how to share what we were going through. And she had no idea. So if I don't know how to help myself and she doesn't know how to help me or the situation, like it would have, if I didn't, I don't think if I went through that year of counseling, we might not be together right now, mm-hmm. And I don't know where I'd be, because right. My family's my world, mm-hmm. So, but I'm here.
No, that's amazing. And I say, like, she was nagging because I feel like a woman that doesn't nag in the positive way doesn't love you. Yeah. Women, we're built that way. That's how we are, because we care. Yes, and we'll push you to your limit because we care and because we know you. Yeah, but in your case, it was to your guys' benefit. And it's exciting to know that you had the positive experience with attorneys. There's people that have had the shitty experiences with your attorneys. And
yes,
I think trust is the most important part for the injured workers, to fully trust your attorney. If you don't feel like you trust your attorney, then it's time to change the attorney. Now, let me ask you another question, Donny. How much have you paid out of pocket from the moment you decided to get the attorney to the attorney?
I mean, Bilal would know that better.
Nothing.
$0 for this case right now. The bicep case. They did a settlement. I mean, are we allowed to talk about that? Like what it was?
Sure.
And you could tell me if I'm wrong. I believed it was 20,000 or 21,000, and I got 17. So you guys got like 4,000 of that.
Yeah, it's about 15%.
Is that what it is?
Yep. And
it's 15%.
It's pretty standard in the industry. It's 15%. Most lawyers charge that in workers' comp, and it's always contingency fee based, meaning that it's always taken off the far end of the award. So if you get nothing, we get nothing. And there's no upfront costs. There's, to you at least, it's all on us to prosecute your case to the extent possible. And then when we win, that's when we get paid.
Yeah, and honestly, I had no idea. I had no idea that that's what it was. So like for the longest time, that's why I waited to even get a lawyer, because I'm like, oh my gosh, this phone call could be $1,000 right now. And I don't have that. I can't give him $1,000 right now. And then once I realized, they kept telling me, like, because I kept asking them, like, so do you do I charge, like, do I put it on a credit card? They're like, no, we're just looking at your case, or we're going to do this. And I said, oh, okay. So then I'll pay next week. Like, aww. I kept trying, like, I'm like, I just want someone to take care of this. And they're like, no, you workers' comp lawyers, we don't get paid until you get paid. And I'm like, oh, Okay.
Yeah. And that's why I asked the question, because there's a lot of people that will dive into never getting an attorney because of the fact that they think they do have to pay out of pocket. And I wanted to clarify, you being a client of Pacific Workers, you haven't paid anything unless you settle. And even in that case, the money doesn't come from your bank account. The insurance is the one that ends up pulling out the money. So it's never a question of where am I going to get the money to pay the attorney.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's no, I mean, you can't, like you had asked, earlier about the case that we settled on, like, oh, was it because it was a number? I mean, what is a number that can equate to you just being in pain for the rest of your life? And with him and I, like, we discussed that. It's like, I mean, $1 million might help me forget about it a little bit, but it's still going to be there. And that's the thing, is like, it doesn't equate to quality time with my wife and daughter, because I might have this money, but if I lose my family in the long run because I'm in pain and I'm, irate with them all the time, like that. And that's what it was. Like, my daughter would come up and play with me and I would yell at her because my knee was in constant pain and I couldn't get up to go, play house with her, or, stuff like that. So it was taking a toll on me mentally, to a point where, like, I was going to have a breakdown or something, and now it's like, I have a different outlook on life now, being, in a position where we fought tooth and nail to get the surgery redone. Like, I already had surgery on this knee, and 3 months into the recovery, I retore everything. And then that's when the headaches started to happen. I mean, a good year and a half of fighting to get another doctor to look at it was just hard enough. So, I mean, I out of pocket, not to you guys, but like, I paid for my own MRI before they approved it. I went and paid to go to my doctor, because I didn't think that they were going to do anything, and it was tough, because the moment I said those words, workers' comp, even Kaiser was like, well, let's wait to see what your workers' comp doctor says. So now I don't even have a backup plan until the case is done. So I think that was what was the hardest part, was just the uncertainty of where I was going to be, month to month.
And you're right. The money, workers' comp as a system was designed specifically to limit liability for injuries. If someone could come in and sue their employer every time they got hurt as a result of the employer doing something stupid, violating OSHA guidelines, not using safety equipment the right way and stuff, pretty much every employer out there would be bankrupt, right? You'd take them to jury trial and there'd be these huge damages. And workers' comp is a carve out for that. And so oftentimes, most people don't feel like they've been made whole for the settlement, and even as Donnie said, if it was $1 million, maybe it'll help them forget a little bit. But most workers' comp cases don't pay that. It's unfortunate. And again, that's the system we work in, and trying to help people understand that can be difficult sometimes. It really is. It's outdated. It's antiquated. The amount that people get for things like temporary disability and permanent disability are extremely limited. And even the future medical is too. When you talk about the cost of the medical care, if you wanted to go get a knee replacement surgery with the best doctor you can find in the country, you might pay $70,000 for it. Well, with workers' comp insurance rates, that may only cost them $15,000 to $20,000. So when you get ready to talk about settling out your workers' comp case, the insurance company doesn't care how much it costs you to go to a good doctor that you trust your health with. They only care what their bottom line is and how much it's going to cost them.
What the book says.
Exactly, what the book says. And then you run in this scenario where there's what your medical is worth on paper and what the insurance company perceives their financial liability to be. And there's this huge disconnect. And oftentimes people are left feeling like, I didn't get a fair shake. Which again, I think that part, that was part of the conversation with Donnie specifically about, his future medical needs as well.
That's unfortunate.
Like, with my bicep case, like I kick myself that I didn't call you guys, a year before. But do you think my bicep case, it would have been handled a lot differently? I mean, is that an obvious question? Sorry. That's an obvious question.
I don't want to.
I just answered the question myself.
Yeah, I mean,
if anything, you have the answer to that.
Yeah.
Well, I can touch on this briefly. Donny had come to us and he had already seen a QME doctor. And the QME, the qualified medical evaluator, they're the ones that really hold your case in their hands. They tell you what the permanent disability is, what your future medical needs are and such. And Donny had gone to a bad QME. This QME literally said he had 0 permanent disability. There was nothing wrong with his bicep, and that was the end of it. And so when the case came to me, they were offering him pittance. Not only did they not have his temporary disability correct, but they wanted to give him this meager settlement to kind of kick him out the door and be done. And so, luckily we were able to negotiate that up pretty significantly. And we also got him paid all the retro temporary disability that he was owed, and he's taken care of. But kind of working backwards in a case is very difficult, to some extent. The damage is already done, and it's very hard to flip it. You're only entitled to 1 QME in a case within any given specialty. So that's the doctor you have to fight with.
And then we couldn't even go back to this QME because he was no longer with us. Yeah.
Wow, that's insane. And it's the true stories behind, workers' compensation. I think that's why one of the reasons we decided to throw on the series of having the stories of our clients is because I think there is no better way for injured workers to understand how, in fact, workers' compensation works besides through the mouth of the person that's actually been through it, And Donny, I thank you for the opportunity for having us, dive into your life and telling us exactly how it is without any, it was either black or white. There was no gray in between. And I really do thank for sharing this story to many of us. And hopefully those listening on the podcast, can also get an idea of, what's to come or what's not to come. Because as Bilal, more than anyone know, there's cases that have just literally breezed through the system and nothing's happened.
Yep.
Why is that?
It's case by case, doctor by doctor, attorney by attorney, adjuster by adjuster. There's so many factors that go into it. You could have the right client with the right employer, with the right adjuster, the right doctor, the right attorney, and everything's just streamlined. Someone gets all the care they need. They get a great settlement. They're either back to work or moved on, and that's it. And it can happen in a matter of 12 months.
How often does that happen?
It's pretty rare, to be honest. And the problem is too, sometimes is most people, they try to work their way through the system by themselves before contacting a lawyer. And that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier.
That's what I did.
Yeah, you wind up with the wrong QME or the wrong treating physician. You get discharged from care. You're not really given the opportunity you need to heal. You're getting paid the wrong temporary disability rate. You're assessed a super low or non-existent amount of permanent disability, and it's a mess. Other times, it takes longer, right? It took us a year and a half to get Donny to a doctor that was confident enough to give him the surgery he needed.
Wow.
And that happens a lot, and I've had cases come to my office that are 10, 12, 13 years old. I got a call from a potential client. It was referred to me by a physician's office, and her injury was from 2013. This was just yesterday, and now, we're probably going to take on her case. I think, I still have to do my due diligence on it, but it's someone who's been going through the system now for almost 9 years by themselves.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Now, when you say, and I want to touch on this briefly, because if there's someone listening to the podcast right now that we can switch their end story, their future by this podcast story, it's what does an attorney do for me? Like Donny obviously understood at the end of the first injury that attorneys do way more than what you think. I'm pretty sure, Donny, you got thrown in situations where you had no idea what language they were speaking to you in, one. Number two, they were probably giving you so many things without any resources for you to actually make a decision on. Like it's almost, you're going in blinded.
It's true. And honestly, the phone call that you make to an office costs nothing. And at least someone could do that preliminary, like, give you kind of the heads up of what it's going to be and, what to expect, and reaching out for help and getting someone, like Bilal that knows the system, was a big help. I mean, like I said, I wish I called you guys a year and a half before. I did, because, who knows, maybe if I contacted them you guys first, I wouldn't even be dealing with a knee surgery right
The
now. I
second
could have,
injury.
like,
Yeah.
my arm, my bicep would have been healed, and so I don't know. I mean, who knows
We'll never know.
why this happened? We'll never know exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Now,
Let's just
Bilal,
move on.
on your situation as the attorney, what can you tell the injured worker, someone who's just fresh new into the podcast and someone who's just recently injured themselves at work? How can we tell them what exactly an attorney does for them?
I mean, you don't miss what you never had, and when it comes time to work, workers' comp knowledge, I have a lot of experienced attorneys. We have probably 200 years of combined workers' comp experience at my firm, and the labor code itself is thousands of sections. There's other laws and statutes. There's court procedure. There's deadlines, and most people don't know those things. And there is a certain way to go about handling a workers' comp case that, unless you're familiar with the process, you wouldn't know. And then there's the intangibles. For example, Donnie's current treating physician, I don't know that he would have ever found her or the surgeon that did his knee surgery absent, a referral from our office. And there's this process and knowledge that we have as workers' comp attorneys in this field that gives us the ability to help clients just by virtue of the fact that we've been there, done that. We can make sure we get to the right QME, make sure we get to the right treating physician, make sure that benefits are being paid at the right rate, and then ultimately make sure there's a fair settlement. And then along the way, make sure there's things like discrimination or retaliation. And then also just to be there. Clients have tons of questions. I always give out my cell phone, and we talk through it. And I always tell them no stupid questions. Every question's a good question, because it's easy for me. It's stuff that I talk about all the time. For other people, it's like a foreign language. And so that's the value I think that we deliver as lawyers and workers' comp.
Yeah, and it's true, because I mean, there were a couple of phone calls where I was furious, at something the doctor said or something, and then I talked to Bilal, and I'm like, okay, everything's gonna be okay, and that's it. It's just more of a peace of mind, because you're not having to, do the back work, the paperwork, the deadlines, everything that he said, so. For someone to take that on, it was like 10 weights lifted off my shoulder, and it's something that it was just easier to come back to my wife and said, look, I really trust, this team, this lawyer is phenomenal. And I was saying that the first month, just based on what he had helped me with. And, and now it's like, I think we're going to invite him to dinner after all this. So.
Oh, he officially got the dinner invite.
Let me know when.
Yeah, right.
He does love to eat. I definitely think it's amazing that we get to share this podcast. And again, for those injured workers that are just finding this podcast, we hope you get something out of it. Most importantly, focus on your recovery and let the experts focus on all the back and forth calling, because working in the law firm myself with you guys, I see the amount of paperwork, the amount of calls, the amount of stress that is put on the teams to get the injured worker on the right spot. And if I can just imagine, as an injured worker, you have to deal with that on your own, on top of dealing with yourself having to heal and dealing with the pain. That's almost impossible in my eyes. It's a lot to take on. So, Donny, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. We will catch you on the next episode. If you like this podcast, please make sure you hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to us on. And if you prefer a different platform that we're not on, send us a message. I'll be more than happy to submit the podcast into any new platform. Follow us on social media. You can find us everywhere at Work Comp Talk. And then Bilal, they can find us on if they're an injured worker and they want an attorney, they can find us online. Where?
Yes, pacificworkers.com.
And we're everywhere on social media as well. There's plenty of blogs you can read. We even have a pocket guidebook that kind of helps you and guides you into what to expect from workers' compensation. You can totally download that as free as well. And then Donny, we know you have some gaming experience and you're doing your thing while you're on recovery. Is there anything you'd like to share with the clients? Anything positive?
Well, just while you're recovering, just keep yourself busy. I picked up streaming and doing podcasts like this to kind of just vent and get things off my chest. And It's been very therapeutic. I would actually say streaming and talking to people was actually more therapeutic than even the psychiatrist and the group, because I reached other people that were going through exactly what I was going through. And it's nice to hear, oh yeah, I went through that too. And, instead of,
You're not alone.
it's okay, everything's going to be all right. When it wasn't all right, so on the other hand, where they were so supportive, it was phenomenal.
So can someone reach you out and talk to you about their story and ask you questions?
Definitely. So yeah, if you guys want to reach me, my name on every platform is Love to Stunt on Twitch. So LUV, the number 2, and then Twitch on Twitch, and it's on every platform: Instagram, Twitch, TikTok, all of them. So
oh wow, you're tech savvy now. We'll drop the whole name on the description below, so you guys can definitely find Donny. If you guys have questions, you guys want to connect with him and just discuss workers' compensation scenarios and stories, by all means, Donny's totally open to it. So thank you guys for joining us. We'll catch you guys on the next episode of Work Comp Talk.
Thank you so much.